Hey everyone, remote work. It's all the rage these days, right?
Feels like it.
Yeah. No commute, total flexibility work in your PJs all day if you want. I mean, who wouldn't love that?
Right.
Well, Podcast Espresso's latest episode is called The Dark Side of Remote Work, with a big subtitle, You Need to Know This. And it got me thinking, maybe there's a whole other side to this remote work thing.
Yeah, a dark side.
Yeah, one we're not really seeing.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to deep dive into today, an article called Doing Remote Work, Be Scared. Be very scared.
Ooh, scary.
I know, right? It sounds a little clickbaity,
It does.
but it got me thinking, are we overlooking some serious downsides to remote work?
Well, this article claims that even Google is having second thoughts.
Google.
Yeah, Google, the company that practically invented all those remote work tools.
Wow. So they're saying even Google is backing away from fully remote setups.
Yeah, and it's not just about missing those water cooler chats.
Oh, right.
Google found that while individual productivity stayed high in fully remote teams, there was a noticeable dip in team cohesion.
Interesting.
And get this, fewer of those aha moments.
Moments. What are those?
You know those spontaneous breakthroughs, those innovative ideas that just pop up when you're brainstorming with your team?
Oh, yeah.
Well, those seem to be declining in fully remote setups.
So it's more than just missing out on gossip.
It is. Those hallway chats, those unplanned interactions, they can actually lead to major breakthroughs.
Huh. I guess I never thought about it like that.
It's because you're bouncing ideas off people with totally different perspectives.
Yeah.
And in a remote setting, it's easy to get stuck in your own little silo.
Right. You're just staring at your screen all day.
Exactly. And you miss out on those chances to cross-pollinate ideas.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So is Google the only one rethinking this whole remote thing?
No, not at all. The podcast mentioned a bunch of other companies, too.
Really? Like who?
Big names. Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, even Apple.
Wow, those are some major players.
And they're all starting to encourage a return to the office, at least part-time.
So much for work from anywhere, huh?
Looks like it.
But why the big change? What's driving this?
Well, the article highlights some data suggesting that overall productivity can actually decrease in fully remote teams.
Really?
Yeah, by as much as 10 to 20%.
Wow, that's a lot. So what's causing that?
Well, distractions at home are definitely a factor.
Yeah, I can see that.
But there's more to it. Communication challenges, difficulty coordinating things, and even struggles with self-motivation.
It's got to be tough to stay focused when your couch is right there.
Yeah, and remember that story in the article about the project that completely derailed because of miscommunication?
Oh, yeah, the one with all the endless email chains?
Exactly. It took days to clarify something that could have been solved in 5 minutes face-to-face.
I can definitely relate to that.
It shows just how important clear, immediate communication is for teamwork.
So those quick in-person interactions, those nonverbal cues, you just can't replicate that online.
Exactly. And sometimes those things are crucial. But what about the argument that remote work lets people work when and where they're most productive?
Yeah, that's a good point.
It is, but the article argues that even if you are super productive at home, it could actually hurt your career in the long run.
Wait, what? How is that possible?
Think about it. You're less visible to the people making decisions. You might miss out on those informal mentoring opportunities, and it's harder to build the relationships that lead to promotions.
You could be killing it work-wise, but still get left behind.
Yeah.
Just because you're not physically there.
It's a real possibility. The article even mentioned a statistic that remote workers are 38% less likely to get promoted.
38%, that's huge.
It is. So this isn't about saying remote work is all bad.
Right.
It's about recognizing that it's not some perfect utopia.
There are trade-offs.
Exactly.
So maybe Podcast Espresso is onto something with this whole dark side thing.
Yeah, they definitely raise some valid points. And it's not just about productivity and career advancement either.
Oh, there's more.
The article also gets into the potential impact of remote work on our mental health.
Oh, wow. Okay, let's
Yeah.
talk about that. What are we talking about here?
Well, when you're working from home, the lines between work and personal life can get really blurry.
Yeah, I can see that happening.
It can lead to longer work hours, difficulty switching off, and this constant feeling of being on.
Ugh, I know that feeling.
It's like you're always just one click away from your work email.
Exact.
And then there's the social isolation factor.
And right, you're not seeing your colleagues every day.
Exactly. Even if you're an introvert, those little interactions, those coffee breaks, or just saying good morning in the hallway, they actually play a bigger role in our well-being than we realize.
Yeah, I guess we're social creatures after all.
We are, and the article points out how this lack of social interaction can contribute to feelings of loneliness, isolation, even depression.
Okay, so we've got potential downsides for productivity, career advancement, and now mental health. This is starting to sound pretty bleak.
It's not all doom and gloom, though.
Okay, good.
Remote work itself isn't the problem, it's how we approach it.
So how do we make it work? How do we do remote work right?
That's what we're going to explore in the next part of our deep dive. We'll uncover some strategies for creating a healthy and sustainable remote work experience, one that benefits both individuals and organizations.
Okay, I'm definitely interested in that.
Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back with part 2 of our deep dive into the dark side of remote work.
And we'll shed some light on how to make it work for you. All right, we're back and ready to dive back into this whole remote work thing. We've talked about the downsides, but now I want to get to the solutions.
Yeah, how do we make remote work actually work?
Exactly, because
Yeah.
it's not going away anytime soon.
Right.
So what's the first step?
Well, Podcast Espresso really emphasized the importance of boundaries.
Boundaries.
Yeah, it's easy to let work take over your whole life when your office is also your living room.
Oh, yeah, I can definitely see that. That work email is always just sitting there.
Right. And it can be hard to switch off when your workspace is also your relaxing space.
So how do we create those boundaries?
Well, one thing is to have a dedicated workspace.
Even if it's just a corner of a room.
Exactly. Even if it's small, having that physical separation can make a big difference.
Like a visual cue to your brain. This is work time. This is not work time.
Exactly. And it's not just about the physical space, it's also about setting clear work hours.
So like sticking to a schedule.
As much as possible, yeah. It helps prevent work from creeping into your evenings and weekends.
Right. And it helps set expectations for your colleagues too.
Exactly.
Okay, so boundary schedules, got it. But what about the social isolation thing? How do we deal with that?
That's a big one, and it requires being more intentional about creating those social interactions that you'd normally have in an office.
But how do you replicate those spontaneous water cooler moments when everyone's miles apart?
It's not easy, but some companies are trying things like virtual coffee breaks, online team building activities,
Oh, interesting.
or even just encouraging people to chat about non-work stuff in their online channels.
So it's about creating opportunities for those informal interactions that happen naturally in an office.
Exactly, and this is where managers play a big role.
How so?
They need to be proactive about fostering a sense of community.
So it's not enough to just throw everyone into a virtual room and say, go.
Right, you need to actively create that connection.
What are some things managers can do?
Well, things like regular virtual check-ins, team building exercises, acknowledging birthdays and milestones.
Little things like that can go a long way, I guess.
They can, and it shows that you care about your team as people, not just as workers.
Okay, so we're tackling the social and emotional challenges.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the career advancement piece?
Right. Remember that statistic about remote workers being less likely to get promoted?
Yeah, that was pretty scary.
It is, and it highlights how important communication and self-advocacy are for remote workers.
So it's not enough to just do great work. You have to make sure people know about it.
Exactly. You need to be more intentional about showcasing your work, seeking out mentorship opportunities, and staying connected with key decision makers.
It's like you have to work harder to be seen when you're not physically there.
In a way, yes. But it's essential if you want to thrive in a remote setting.
Okay, so boundaries, social connection, career advancement,
Yeah.
anything else?
Oh, yeah. Podcast Espresso also talked about asynchronous communication.
Asynchronous communication. What's that?
It's basically any type of communication that doesn't happen in real time.
Like email.
Yeah, or project management tools, even pre-recorded video messages.
So it's about giving people the flexibility to work on their own time.
Exactly, and it can be really helpful for remote teams, especially those working across different time zones.
It can reduce those endless email chains too.
It allows people to contribute and collaborate without having to be online at the same time.
Okay, I see how that could be really helpful. So we've got boundaries, intentional connections, self-advocacy, asynchronous communication. Are we missing anything?
Well, there's also the hybrid model.
Right, the best of both worlds.
Exactly, combining the flexibility of remote work with the benefits of in-person interaction.
But how do you actually make a hybrid model work? It sounds logistically complicated.
It can be, but the key is to start by figuring out what needs to be done in person and what can be done remotely.
Okay, so like having clear guidelines.
Exactly, and then you can create a schedule that works for everyone. Some days in the office, some days remote.
So it's about finding that balance, that sweet spot.
Exactly. And it's an ongoing process.
You have to constantly be evaluating and adjusting.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
So trial and error is part of the process.
It is, but that's how we learn and adapt. The future of work is all about being flexible and open to new ideas.
Okay, so I've got boundaries, connection, self-advocacy, asynchronous communication, and hybrid models. What are some key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, first, remote work isn't bad. It offers a lot of benefits, but it's important to be aware of the downsides.
Don't go into it thinking it's going to be a perfect utopia.
Exactly. And second, successful remote work requires effort and intentionality.
It's not something you can just set and forget.
Right. You have to be proactive about setting boundaries, communicating effectively, and staying connected.
And find what works best for you.
Absolutely. And finally, the world of work is changing.
Hybrid models, flexible schedules, all that stuff.
Exactly. We need to be adaptable and open to new ways of working.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener?
How are you navigating this new world of work?
What are your biggest challenges?
And what are your successes?
We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Join the conversation in the comments below.
And let's continue this deep dive together. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've really been digging into all the nuances of remote work. You know, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
It's been quite a journey.
Yeah, it has. But now I want to zoom out a bit. Yet look at the bigger picture.
See how all these specific insights fit into the broader trends shaping the future of work.
Exactly. Because remember, we started with that article, Doing Remote Work, Be Scared, Be Very Scared. And it's not just about scaring people away from remote work.
Right, it's about something bigger.
It is. This article is really just part of a much larger conversation about how work itself is changing, not just where we do it.
Absolutely.
It's not just about ditching the commute or wearing PJs at our desks. It's about how we connect, how we collaborate, and how we find meaning and purpose in our careers in this new landscape.
And technology is a huge part of that.
Yeah.
The same tools that enable remote work are also blurring the lines between our professional and personal lives.
Right. It's like we're constantly connected.
And that creates both opportunities and challenges.
It's like we're all trying to figure this out as we go along. There's no roadmap.
Exactly. And that's where that warning in the article comes in. It's a reminder to be intentional about our choices, to shape our work lives rather than letting them shape us.
So it's not about saying no to remote work. It's about approaching it with our eyes wide open.
Exactly. Understanding the potential downsides and making sure it truly serves us, both individually and collectively.
And that means asking some tough questions, like what are our priorities, what kind of work environment helps us thrive, and what are our non-negotiables when it comes to work-life balance?
All important questions.
Yeah, and how do we create a work culture that supports well-being, connection, and meaningful work no matter where people are located?
Those are the big questions we need to be thinking about.
And there are no easy answers.
Yeah.
But this article and Podcast Espresso's take on it, I think it's a great starting point for this conversation.
It definitely gets people thinking.
It does. So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's go back to that advice from the article. You know, put on a shirt and go to work.
Yeah, that one.
It sounds simple, but I think it speaks to something deeper.
It's about showing up fully right.
Exactly. Both in our work and in our lives.
Being present, engaged, intentional in how we approach our work and how we design our lives.
It's about finding that balance between flexibility and structure.
Between individual needs and collective goals.
And recognizing that the future of work is not some fixed destination.
It's a journey.
A journey we're all on together.
Exactly. So as you go about your day, think about what putting on a shirt means for you.
What does it look like to show up authentically and intentionally in your work and in your life?
What small steps can you take today to create a work style and a lifestyle that truly aligns with your values?
These are questions worth pondering. And we hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought.
And if you're hungry for more thought-provoking insights and deep dives into the trends shaping our world, check out Podcast Espresso. They've got a knack for making you think differently.
Thanks for joining us on this exploration of the complexities of remote work. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.